Hello everyone. We are back at the Purveyor in Fallout 76, but this time it's during the 2021 Bombs Drop half-off sale. We'll burn through 2,000 Scrip on 3-star legendary weapons as we often do, talk about what makes them good, bad, or somewhere in between, and I will say, remember, it sounds like 2,000 Scrip isn't a whole lot considering we usually do 1,000, but when we get things for half price, it adds up to a whole lot of weapons to go through. I've had enough people request me doing another longer Scrip video that I wanted to make it happen. So for those of you who wanted to see it, here it is. For the dude who will inevitably tell me I talk too much in the comments, get off my lawn. Remember, if you like videos like this and want to see more, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. There's always more to come. And without further ado, let's go see Mama Mumbles. And our first roll of the day is an Assassin's M79 grenade launcher with limb damage and 250 damage resistance while loading. So our primary effect here is Assassins, gives us 50% more damage to humans, which I guess is nice. Maybe if you're into PvP, it's a little nicer, but realistically, human NPCs are super squishy in this game, so it's kind of one of the more useless legendary effects. Extra limb damage isn't a bad thing on a weapon like this. If you attack creatures in groups, maybe you can cripple some limbs, that's a good thing, but overall, not a huge fan. Damage resistance while reloading. You do reload in between every shot, so I guess maybe there's a little bit of use case for that, but overall, not super impressed with that one. What do we have next? Now we've got a Furious Radium Rifle with 50% limb damage and damage resistance while reloading. So, different weapon, different primary effect, everything else stays the same. The Furious effect is not totally lost on a weapon like this. As far as commando weapons go, the Radium Rifle doesn't do the most damage per shot, so you will get some mileage out of that, but overall, I'd prefer to have something like Anti-Armor or Bloodied here, or even Aristocrats or Junkies, but, you know, Furious is not bad. Limb damage, I don't love. Things are going to die pretty quickly with this weapon, so I don't think you're really going to see much use out of that. And damage resistance while reloading here again, not a bad thing to have, but certainly not something that you're going to write home about. Doesn't hurt to have it, but there's any number of other effects that could be more useful. So overall, is it okay? Sure. If you're a mid-level character or a low-level character that doesn't have a lot of good stuff, it could be good, but overall, meh. And here's another one that's kind of meh. The Instigating Snub-Nose 44 pistol. Last round effect, so last round in the magazine can deal double damage, 25% chance for that, and our Vats critical meter fills 15% faster. So the Instigating effect is not terrible on a weapon like this because it does pretty solid base damage, and that's what you're doubling, but it's not amazing anymore, so I don't love that. The last shot effect I really don't love. 25% chance to deal double damage if it's the last round in the magazine. You're going to do a lot of tactical reloads with a revolver because it reloads slowly, so don't really see you actually triggering that effect very often. Vats critical meter filling faster. That's good. If you're a pistol build, you'll use Vats, but ultimately not super impressed by this. If it was Bloodied, maybe that would be better, or Anti-Armor, but with what we have on it, not in love with it. How about now? Do we have something good now? Nah, maybe a little bit better. An Aristocrats Hellstorm missile launcher with bashing damage and perception. So the Aristocrats effect is definitely one of my favorite full health effects. You don't really have to sacrifice anything to use it. So all you have to do is be filthy stinking rich with caps. So once your character is lousy with caps and you've got more than 29,000, I believe, you'll do 50% more damage, which is good. Bashing damage, unfortunately, this is not a minigun, so bashing damage is completely useless in every way. Extra perception will help with Vats accuracy, and depending on your build, maybe this is fairly significant. If you have low perception, then one extra means something. But for most players, I think the Aristocrats effect is what they're going to be looking at, and I don't know, maybe it's good. Maybe you'd like it if you're into that kind of thing. Let's keep going here. We've got a Hunter's Tesla rifle with increased Vats hit chance and 250 damage resistance while reloading. So the Hunter's effect, another one of our situational damage effects. Not in love with that effect at all on a weapon like this. You're just not going to keep a weapon around to do extra damage against animals. There's just not enough scenarios where that matters. Extra Vats hit chance with a Tesla rifle is fairly pointless. This is definitely a spray and pray kind of weapon, not something you're going to use Vats to aim with. Extra damage resistance while reloading is probably the most useful effect on here because the reload takes so long. But other than that, unfortunately, there are lots of good Tesla rifles you can get. This just really isn't one of them. Let's see what's next. And now we've got a Ghoul Slayer's Crossbow with action points replenishing with each kill and extra agility. So if you're really, really into crossbows, then you could probably have a little bit of fun with this, if for no other reason than ghouls are squishy enough to kill with a crossbow. Other than that, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of mileage out of this. Replenishing AP with each kill, it doesn't hurt. It's not a bad effect. It can be pretty good. I just don't see it as super desirable here. Well, maybe it would be. This is not a super low AP cost weapon, so you could get a little damage. You could get a little mileage out of that. Extra agility is also going to give you a little more AP, which isn't bad. Unfortunately, it's a crossbow, so it's pretty underpowered. Not super fun to use for most players, though some may really enjoy it. And the primary effect, not one of the more desirable ones. I guess it's probably in the middle of those situational effects, but I'm not in love with it. This is almost definitely going back to the Scrip bin. This one is a little bit better. We've got a Mutant's Assault Rifle with bashing damage and extra agility. So the Mutant's effect a few months ago got a buff. It used to just be I believe 10% damage buff if you were mutated. Well, that's basically nothing. So now it's 5% for each mutation, for a total of 25%. So it's an improvement over what it was, a substantial improvement over what it was, but it doesn't really stack up against a lot of other effects like aristocrats or junkies or anti-armor. It's just not that good. So the upside to it is you don't have to make any sacrifices to do it. If you're a higher level character, you're going to have 5 mutations. That's pretty likely. So no real loss there, but not a big gain from the effect either. Bashing damage is pointless here. Extra agility will give us a little bit of extra AP for Vats, but the assault rifle's also a little bit underpowered, so yeah, don't love it. And now we've got a Gourmand's hunting rifle with damage while aiming and 250 damage resistance while reloading. So this weapon here, this is an interesting one because I don't love this effect. It amounts to a total of a 24% damage buff, which kinda sucks. Damage while aiming, I'd much rather be using this in Vats. Damage resistance while reloading, don't love that for most higher level characters. However, let's say you rolled this on a level 10 character, where you don't have lots of perk cards, you don't have lots of AP for Vats yet, you don't have lots of damage resistance, and any little extra damage buff is going to be a big help. All of a sudden, this becomes pretty useful, and it's one of the effects that you can pretty easily handle. It's easy to stay fed and watered in Fallout 76, even at a low level. So this could be a great roll on a low-level weapon. For a high-level player, probably not so much. So there's a positive side there, but I'm not in love with it. And now this one I am really absolutely not in love with. This is a total piece of garbage. So we've got a pipe bolt action pistol, which I dislike tremendously. The pipe pistol can be fun, but the pipe bolt action pistol I do not love. It's very, very slow and not very fun to use. The Exterminator's effect is probably my least favorite of the situational damage effects. There just aren't enough scenarios where you need a special weapon for mirelurks and bugs to justify its existence. The last shot effect is also terrible. Once again, we're going to be doing tactical reloads as you use this thing. The chances that you're actually going to get that last round in a magazine bonus are just really slim, so really don't like that. Extra agility will help you in Vats, but that's no reason to keep a pipe bolt action pistol laying around, so this one's definitely going to go away very quickly. And this one is maybe a little more interesting. So here we've got an Executioner's single action revolver with Vats critical shots doing more damage and extra perception. The Executioner's effect for a long time was pretty underrated. Since One Wasteland, where all the damage got nerfed for everything except apparently for Executioners, it's become a little more popular. Now, it's still not super useful on weapons that do really high damage, but this is not a weapon that does really high damage because it's not silent. You can't sneak with it. So if you're going to use a pistol, well, an Executioner's model might not be a bad way to go, because basically your damage buff when they're below 40% health still appears to be multiplicative, so it's really, really good. Extra Vats critical damage. If you're pistol build, you're probably running Vats, so you're going to get some mileage out of that. Extra perception, going to help with your Vats accuracy once again. Not bad, not too bad. This one, oh, I want to like you. I want to like this weapon, but I just don't. The Gourmand's effect, once again, it maxes out at 24% damage. It's just not very good. Explosive on a black powder weapon like this is pretty powerful. It's basically a percentage of the base damage of the weapon, so you get quite a bit of explosive damage out of this, so that's good. And hits have a chance to generate a stealth field, which is kind of interesting. I did a weapon spotlight on a black powder pistol a while back, and I found that if I maintained some distance, I could be fairly stealthy with it. So maybe adding that stealth field to the mix could make it a little more useful in that way. I don't know, might be fun to play around with. Ultimately, I just don't really like black powder weapons. They're fun for about 5 minutes, and then you realize that they take 5 minutes to reload and you never want to touch them again. So for that reason, I don't love it. Now we've got another more interesting one. We've got a Furious Railway Rifle with Vats critical shots doing more damage and extra damage resistance while reloading. So the Furious effect here, this is a high damage per shot weapon. So you're not going to get a ton of mileage out of the Furious effect unless you're targeting a boss type enemy where you're going to have to put a ton of rounds into it. With that said, that's true of all railway rifles. The railway rifle is extremely powerful, so you're not going to really need any legendary effect on a railway unless you're fighting a boss. So in that case, Furious is as good as almost anything. After a couple of shots, you've got a 50% damage buff, so not too bad. Extra Vats critical damage, always a good thing, and damage resistance while reloading. While I'm not in love with that effect on a lot of things, on a weapon like this that you have to reload every 10 shots, well, if there's a time to use that, if there's a weapon where it can be beneficial, it's one where either the reload takes forever or you have to reload it often, and that fits that latter category. And now we've got a Berserker's assault rifle with the last shot effect and damage resistance while aiming. So this is one that I really don't care for. The Berserker's effect should be good. It should be a really good effect, and in my opinion, it should be buffed to the point where it actually does better than Bloodied. Bloodied is high damage because there's a trade-off. You play at low health, it's a higher risk build. The reality, though, is that Berserker's is much more challenging. It's much harder to stay alive without armor in Fallout 76 than it is at low health. You've got a ton of perks to synergize with a low health build and keep you alive. You've got nothing to synergize with Berserker's. So Berserker's is way, way harder to stay alive for. Unfortunately, the max damage you get out of it is 50%. That doesn't stack up with all the perks that synergize for damage at low health. So that should be much higher. Unfortunately, it's not. And unfortunately, our next roll is a Ghoul Slayer's grenade launcher with Vats critical shots doing more damage and 90% reduced weight. So yeah, really, really don't love this one. It could be a little bit of fun if you just want to go clear out the White Spring and blow up a bunch of ghouls, but that's about the extent of how much fun it's going to be. That's critical shots doing more damage, I guess, doesn't hurt you. 90% reduced weight doesn't hurt you, but this one's a little off because we don't have any mods on here, but it weighs 1.8 pounds. So pretty sure that the non-90% reduced weight version of this weapon does not weigh 18 pounds. So somebody needs to check their math. Unfortunately, not an amazing roll. Let's keep going. And now we've got a Nocturnal 44 with the last shot effect again and 15% faster reload. So the Nocturnal effect is interesting. It used to really suck because it used to do negative damage during the day. That's no longer the case. Now your damage increases at night, and it's a fairly significant buff, so that's good. It's not the ideal Nocturnal weapon because you can't be sneaky with it, but at least it gives you a pretty solid damage buff. The last shot effect, I still don't love. Maybe you get it a little more because you're only holding 6 rounds here, but ultimately I don't think you're going to trigger that one very often. So again, I'm not a fan of that effect. The chances of actually using it are slim. And 15% faster reload, well, I guess that doesn't hurt. You got to reload this every 6 shots, so that's a pretty good thing. Is it ideal? No, but is it horrible? Also no. Next up, we've got a Suppressor's radium rifle with limb damage and agility. So this one is not one of my favorites, I think we could say fairly. The Suppressor's effect, it's not that it doesn't work, it works fine. Unfortunately, in Fallout 76, there's just not really anywhere that you need to use it. Until we get some real endgame content with some dangerous bosses and dangerous group activities, then maybe suppressors will make some sense. I could hear an argument for using it in daily ops and maybe it helps your teammates, but ultimately I just don't think it matters that much. There's really nothing that's that dangerous in Fallout 76 that reducing its damage output by 25% really matters. Extra limb damage, again, doesn't hurt to have it, but on a commando weapon, things die really fast with commando weapons, assuming you have a commando build. And why would you be running one if you don't have a commando build? So things are going to die very quickly. They're going to die much quicker than they're going to notice that their limbs have broken. So kind of a useless effect here. Extra agility, again, more AP for Vats. Not a bad thing, but ultimately not an amazing combo on a cool but not that amazing weapon. And now we've got a Troubleshooter's 44 with Vats critical shots doing more damage and less Vats AP cost. So I would love to see a different primary effect here, something like Bloodied or anti-armor, but we didn't get that. We got Troubleshooters, which, as far as the situational damage effects go, is one of the better ones. There's a lot of predictable scenarios where you're going to use this, and the weapon doesn't weigh that much, so if you want to carry it around for that special purpose, you can. The second and third stars synergize really well together. We get extra Vats critical damage and less Vats AP cost, considering that, again, most pistol builds will be built around Vats. That's a pretty healthy combination. So imagine if you're a pistol build, this is kind of perfect for clearing out silos, running encrypted, doing AWOL armaments. There's any number of little events and challenges that come up where that could be really good. So ultimately, I'd prefer a more general use effect as the primary, but I can live with this one if I want to run a Revolver build, which personally I don't because they're underpowered. But if you do, then this would be a pretty solid pickup. And now we've got a Hunter's Ultrasight Gatling Laser with limb damage and less Vats AP cost. Yeah, this thing's a pile of garbage. There's absolutely no reason to use it. It's an underpowered weapon to begin with. The way energy weapons deal with damage resistance is still wonky as hell. So don't love this weapon at all. The Hunter's effect is totally pointless. Why would you carry around an 18-pound weapon just in case you run into a bear? No, you're just not going to do that. Limb damage, limb damage might actually be useful on this one because you got to shoot things about 75 million times before they die. So maybe you'd get a little bit of mileage out of this, but probably not. And less Vats AP cost on a heavy weapon. If you're a heavy gunner that uses Vats, more power to you, but I don't think a whole lot of those exist. So that one is definitely destined for the Scrip bin. And so is this one. We've got an Assassin's lever action rifle with limb damage and faster movement speed while aiming. This has not been a very productive trip to the Purveyor, has it? Not yet anyway. We'll see. We'll see if it gets better. Yeah, Assassin's effect, we talked about it earlier. Extra damage to humans. You really just don't need it. Humans are super squishy. If you are running a build that is appropriate for the weapon you're holding with the Assassin's effect and you're having trouble hitting humans or killing humans with it, then yeah, you're doing something wrong in your build. So you got to fix that. Your legendary effect here is not going to save you. Extra limb damage. For a lever action rifle, you should be killing things in 1 or 2 shots for the most part, so not going to help you there. Faster movement speed while aiming. That's not beneficial unless you don't have the Speed Demon mutation, and not very many players don't have that after level 50 or so. So definitely a dud. This one's kind of intriguing. So here we have an Executioner's Fat Man that replenishes AP with each kill and faster movement speed while aiming. The secondary effect here would be really interesting if the Fat Man wasn't so weird in Vats. Unfortunately, it is. It's cool when it works, especially if you're shooting it at something like a Scorch Beast, because you'll see the mini nuke fly all over the map like a homing missile trying to find its target. But when you miss, it just totally misses. So nothing happens. Even if I shoot at a crowd of enemies, if the shot misses, there's no damage to any of them. So that kind of sucks. So, you know, replenishing AP is nice, but you're not really going to use this in Vats to get the benefit from it. Faster movement speed while aiming, again, no benefit to that for the majority of players. The Executioner's effect, kind of cool that you get all that bonus damage if your target's below 40% health, but I would think you're hoping to kill your targets in 1 or 2 shots with a Fat Man anyway, so yeah, no, maybe it's not that interesting after all, is it? Ouch. Now we've got a Zealot's Gamma Gun with limb damage and faster reload. So about the only thing I like here is the faster reload. The Gamma Gun, you have to reload fairly frequently, and it's not a super fast reload. So anything that speeds that up is helpful. Extra limb damage, again, like other weapons, doesn't hurt to have, but you're not really getting a whole lot out of crippling limbs a little bit faster. And extra damage to Scorched. I mean, the Gamma Gun can be really good in the right hands, so maybe somebody could get some mileage out of this, but the extra radiation damage that comes with it doesn't really benefit you there. They're immune to that. Well, really all wasteland creatures are immune to that, so unless you're going after human NPCs, you're not getting a ton of mileage out of that. So yeah, kind of sad. But now we've got another sad one. A Berserker's pump action shotgun with bashing damage and damage resistance while reloading. So we talked about the Berserker's effect before. It's very disappointing still. It should be much better. Bethesda, if you're listening, you can quadruple the damage of Berserkers and be safe. It should be the most powerful legendary effect in the game. It is the hardest thing to stay alive to. It is much harder to stay alive as Berserkers than Bloodied, so it deserves a huge buff. Unfortunately, that's probably never going to happen. Bashing damage. Once again, not a minigun, therefore, total waste of time. Damage resistance while reloading. That doesn't hurt you on a weapon like this. Your reload on a pump action shotgun does take a while, so extra protection is good. Unfortunately, that kind of nullifies the Berserker's effect if it doesn't process off quickly enough, so I don't know. What I do know is I like a quad light machine gun. I'd like it better if it had explosive on it, but quad is still pretty good. We've got extra limb damage and Vats critical meter filling 15% faster. So why do I like the quad effect so much on this weapon? Because the standard version only holds 75 rounds. So this one is going to hold 300. It's got a really fast fire rate, so you burn through 75 rounds super duper quick. Bumping that up to 300, well, now we're talking. No extra damage buff, but it's going to help the overall DPS, and quite frankly, it just makes it more fun to use. The extra limb damage, again, like all the other weapons, I really just could care less about it. And Vats critical meter filling 15% faster. Here we still have a heavy gun, so not really going to use this in Vats unless you're one of those people who uses the LMG like a commando weapon, in which case maybe you do, but probably not. So not a huge fan of the second and third stars, but I definitely like that first one. At least we got something pretty good so far. What's next? And this one is actually kind of intriguing. So we've got the Mutant Slayers effect. Mutant Slayers is another situational effect, but it's one of the better ones. Going out and slaying mutants is a very popular activity in Fallout 76. So a weapon that gives you more power to do that doesn't hurt. The other cool thing about this is you can still double dip on damage. You can take pistol perks and rifle perks if you put a rifle stock on it, and you can do some pretty serious damage with this weapon. You can also put a suppressor on it so you can sneak with it. That's unique. It's the only revolver, at least that I can think of, that can do that. Replenishing action points with each kill is also helpful. If you're using this in Vats, that's going to keep your AP nice and high, so hopefully you have a nearly endless supply of it, depending on your build. Extra perception is going to help your Vats accuracy, so overall, this one's actually kind of a good roll. It's a niche kind of thing. It's not something everybody's going to run with all the time, but it's kind of a cool weapon that you can have a little bit of fun with while doing something that's actually useful in the game. So, not disappointed with that one. This one I'm a little more disappointed with. So the Executioner's effect, again, I don't mind that on a revolver because you can't sneak with it. So you're going to put more shots on targets than you arguably should have to because the damage on revolvers is low. So I don't mind this effect here. It's going to help your overall ability to kill things quickly. Bashing damage increased by 50% is still worthless. It is not a minigun, therefore it is trash. 15% faster reload. Again, on a revolver, you reload them a lot, so limiting your time spent reloading is not a bad thing. Unfortunately, it's still a revolver, so it's underpowered. All revolvers should get a pretty healthy buff in Fallout 76, in my opinion, but I guess we'll just have to keep wishing for that. Let's see what's next. And it's a Hunter's minigun with Vats hit chance and 90% reduced weight. Well, the only thing that might keep this in my stash for a while is the fact that it's 90% reduced weight. So it's 40 Scrip and it doesn't weigh a lot, so it'll be low on the list of things to get turned in. Unfortunately, the Hunter's effect is not very useful unless you just really like the idea of going rad stag hunting with a minigun. Then maybe because this one is lightweight, it'll make sense to keep it around just for the laughs. But other than that, the Vats hit chance effect on here is pointless. It's a heavy gun. You're not going to be using this in Vats. So sadly, this one is, for most players, essentially a slightly legendary minigun based on the fact that it doesn't weigh very much. So maybe you could keep it around just for when you end up with 10,000 rounds of 5mm to burn through, I guess. Other than that, I can't really think of anything good there. All right, this one's a little more interesting. So we've got a Junkies submachine gun with Vats hit chance and faster movement speed while aiming. So faster movement speed while aiming, again, if you've got the speed demon mutation, that's pointless. You're not getting anything out of that. And honestly, even if you don't have it, you really just don't see much. So it's kind of a pointless waste of an effect. The second effect is Vats hit chance. That is, in my opinion, one of the best second stars you can get, simply because that allows you to target weak points on enemies in Vats much easier. Those weak points do at least double damage depending on the type of enemy, so that equals extra damage, make no mistake about it. The Junkies effect is still very popular. It's a 50% damage buff if you have 5 addictions, and if you kind of pick those addictions right, you can pick ones where you can keep popping those chems all the time to give you additional damage on top of that. So the Junkies effect can be really, really good. Vats hit chance is really, really good. Submachine gun's a little underpowered, but hey, what can you do? Can't win them all. So here's another one. Not bad. This is not bad. The Executioner's effect, again, on pistols like this, I don't mind this. Would I prefer Bloodied or anti-armor or something like that? Yes, I would. But the Executioner's effect is not bad. You're going to put a lot of shots on targets with this. Explosive bullets gives you an extra damage buff. Also very good. 250 damage resistance while reloading. Not my favorite effect, but a weapon that you have to reload every 6 rounds is the kind of weapon where that's a little more useful. So all in all, this is not bad. I'd prefer some kind of Vats effect there, but explosive is usually a good effect. There's very few weapons where that's not beneficial. The Executioner's effect, anything where you've got to put a lot of shots on target, it's helpful. And revolvers, unfortunately, you got to put a lot of shots on target. So these all pair up pretty well if you're running a revolver build, which you're probably not. What you probably are running is a stealth commando build, and you're probably running a bloodied one. As such, a bloodied fixer is always a win. And this one replenishes action points with each kill, which is really interesting. And you get 250 damage resistance while reloading. I don't really care about that here. The reload is pretty fast and you're not doing it super often. So you don't get a ton of mileage out of that, but it doesn't hurt anything. What I find interesting here is the replenish AP with each kill. Basically, every time you kill something, you're going to get a little bit of AP back. So if you're running a Bloodied build with unyielding armor, you've already got a ton of AP. If you've got armor or other legend or perks that replenish your AP quickly, then with all this stuff there, you're going to run out of AP not very often. So that's a pretty good thing for a Vats build. And of course, the Bloodied effect is still the king of damage. It's still the king of the hill. The hill isn't as high as it used to be, but it's still the king of the hill. And the fixer is always going to be desirable. So we definitely got something good here. And with trips to the Purveyor, this is how it works. You got to sift through a bunch of crap to get something interesting. And that's what we did. We definitely got an interesting, good weapon here. Is it better than a faster fire rate or an explosive? No, but it's still a very good roll. Any fixer with Bloodied is going to be good, and we got one here. Let's keep rolling and see what we can do next. Come on, Mama Mumbles, don't let me down. You let me down. Who pissed you off, Mama Mumbles? Who hurt you? We've got a Gourmand's pipe pistol, which is better than a pipe revolver, or, well, not better than a pipe revolver, but better than a pipe bolt action pistol. Unfortunately, it's still Gourmand's, maxes out at 24% damage, so not super useful. We've got bashing damage here, so who cares? And damage resistance while aiming. Realistically, you're using this thing in Vats. The iron sights on this, even the reflex sight on it, just not very good. This is a Vats weapon, so essentially our second and third stars might as well not exist. And our first star is only a 24% damage buff. So yeah, this one is a big fat bowl of disappointment. Let's see what's next. And it's a Nocturnal radium rifle with limb damage and less Vats AP cost. So we talked about Nocturnal before. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be, bordering on actually being pretty good. Because there's no negative during the day, if you've got enough carry weight on your character, in theory, you can carry a Nocturnal weapon just to bring it out at night when you get that big damage buff. And it is a pretty solid buff. Limb damage here again, totally useless on this weapon. Once again, you're going to kill your enemies before they notice their legs are broken, so why does it matter? The answer is it doesn't. Less Vats AP cost, however, that's helpful. You're probably going to use this weapon in Vats, so why not get less Vats AP cost? So Nocturnal and that actually make this pretty decent if you're a fan of the radium rifle, which is a bit underpowered, but still fun to use. Now this one is a Berserker's laser pistol with damage while aiming and 250 damage resistance while reloading. We've talked about the Berserker's effect already. I don't think we need to say anything more. Damage while aiming. It doesn't hurt, but again, you're probably going to use it in Vats. Maybe not. Maybe you wouldn't. Damage resistance while reloading. As long as that ticks off before you start shooting, then that's fine. But if it doesn't, then it takes away your Berserker's buff. So depending on how laggy your server might be, that could definitely interfere with your fun. Ultimately, the thing that really is a disappointment here is just the fact that it's a laser pistol. Laser pistols are awesome. They look great. They sound great. They're super fun to use. Unfortunately, they are ridiculously underpowered. It's almost like there was supposed to be a perk to buff their damage, and somebody just forgot to put it in the game. That's my guess, and I'm sticking to it. Let's see what's next. Now we've got a Suppressor's 10mm submachine gun with that stupid last shot effect, and Vats critical meter filling 15% faster. So for the 10mm submachine gun, there's no suppressor for it, so it's a fairly low damage per shot weapon. Not in love with that. The suppressor's effect, again, it works fine. I just question the value of it. I don't think you're really going to get that much mileage out of it. Personally, I'd much rather just have a weapon that kills things faster than reduce their damage by a little bit for a few seconds. If I have to make a choice there, like, I can kill it in 3 seconds with this, and it can do less damage to me, or I can kill it in 1.5 seconds with a fixer. I'm going to take the 1.5 seconds. I'm going to take less damage by murdering things faster. It's easy math. I'm going to take that every time. Last shot effect, we've talked about it plenty. It's a huge disappointment. Looks great on paper, looks fun and interesting on paper, not fun and interesting in real life. Vats critical meter filling faster certainly helps, but the 10mm is not great in Vats, so Ouch, this one hurts. This one just plain hurts. This should be one of the best weapons in the game. The Berserker's effect should be buffed in a major way because, like we've said, it is the hardest thing to do. It is harder to stay alive with no armor than it is at low health. If this was a bloodied explosive railway rifle, it would be an absolute god roll all day long. But because it's Berserkers, it's really not. You're going to do a lot of damage with it, even if you have armor and you're not using the Berserker's effect, just because it's an explosive railway rifle. But what a disappointment. If you do go Berserkers, you get a 50% damage buff, but that's not really that much with the way additive damage works, and you have no armor, so you're probably going to blow yourself up. That's no fun either. Extra agility, that helps. It's going to help with your Vats AP, but other than that, this is just a big disappointment. This could be anything. This could be vampires, it could be bloodied, it could be anti-armor, it could be furious. Hell, it could be mutant slayers and I'd be happy. Berserkers? No, this is garbage. And now we've got a Gourmand's Handmade with damage while aiming and 15% faster reload. So as I go through this video, my opinion on Gourmands is kind of evolving. I'm imagining myself, and maybe it's because we have a lot of new players in the game, you know, with the free weekend and all that. I'm imagining myself as a level 35 player who doesn't have very good perks, doesn't have a lot of stuff, can't really do much of a build yet. This legendary effect at 24% more damage is not that much, but it's something. And something is better than nothing, and even at those mid-levels, it's easy to stay fed and watered. So this is kind of a good mid-level legendary effect. Damage while aiming, I'd prefer a Vats effect, but damage while aiming isn't bad, especially if you don't have all the Vats perks yet. So again, mid-level effect could be good. Faster reload, who doesn't like a faster reload? So here again, as a high-level player, this is useless for me. But if I rolled this at a lower level, it might be kind of useful, might be kind of good. This one, probably not super valuable for anyone. A Suppressor's missile launcher with replenish action points with each kill and damage resistance while aiming. So the Suppressor's effect we've talked about at length, just not a fan of it. I'd much rather do extra damage. The replenishing action points with each kill doesn't hurt. You can use this in Vats, but again, I'm pretty sure we suffered some of the same effects as we do with the Fat Man, where if you miss in Vats, you just completely miss everything, even though it's really an area of effect weapon. So if I shoot at a pack of 10 ghouls on a street and I miss the one I shot at, it still does no damage to any of them. That's kind of a disappointment. Damage resistance while aiming, I guess it doesn't hurt, but ultimately for a 20-pound weapon, not to mention what happens if we put mods on it, it's got to be way better than that to justify the weight of it. Oh, I was wondering when I'd get an infamous Assaultron head. Oh God, this thing is garbage. This thing is complete and total garbage. This is the biggest piece of garbage we've rolled all day. Assassin's Assaultron head, so 50% damage to humans, which we don't need because humans are squishy, although we arguably do need it with the Assaultron head because it's terrible. 25% faster fire rate. This is a weapon that you charge up by putting fusion cells in it, and then you fire it once and then need to reload it again. So that's a complete waste of time. And 250 damage resistance while reloading. Well, maybe that helps, because it does take a little while to reload this thing, and considering the fact that whatever you shot at the first time is now going to be chasing you and trying to murder you while you're reloading it, that's probably the most useful effect you can get on an Assaultron head, come to think of it. So maybe it's not a bad Assaultron head. Unfortunately, it's still an Assaultron head, therefore it's terrible, therefore it's going to go back in the Scrip bin, and therefore I hope the next item is pretty good. And it is pretty good. We've got a Vampire's Flamer with limb damage and a chance to generate a stealth field. So this one's interesting for a few reasons. Number one, the Vampire's effect is awesome. On a fast fire rate weapon, it's basically going to make you invincible. The Flamer is already very good. It does really solid damage, and it has a super fast fire rate once it's going right, so yeah, you're going to do great with this thing. Limb damage, I don't really care about limb damage here, although if you're going up against a boss, maybe it's helpful. What's interesting here is the stealth field effect. And it's interesting because the Flamer is a silent weapon. You can use this thing in stealth, and despite the fact that you're making a big giant hot flash everywhere, your enemies will not be able to spot you. So maybe generating a stealth field makes you even stealthier. So it could be kind of interesting. The Vampire's effect alone makes it good. The stealth field effect makes it interesting. So definitely a solid roll just for the Vampire's effect, but to satisfy my curiosity, which is really why I come here, we got an interesting effect there. Now we've got a Mutant's Pipe Revolver with 25% damage while aiming and faster movement speed while aiming. So the Pipe Revolver we talked about before. I think it's a really interesting weapon. It's the only revolver that you can put a suppressor on and have some stealth with, so that's good. The Mutant Slayer's effect, or the Mutant's effect rather, 5% damage for each mutation. Not amazing. It's only a 25% buff, but you don't have to give anything up to have it, so that's not bad. Damage while 25% damage while aiming can be good on a lot of weapons. I would much rather use something like this in Vats, but that might just be me. Maybe you're a little different. Maybe you're okay with free aiming this thing. Faster movement speed while aiming, disappointing there. Not very useful for most players. But you know, as far as weapons go, if you didn't have a lot of cool legendary stuff, then maybe you could do something fun with this one, at least until you get something better. It's not bad. It's not a bad weapon. It's just not a very exciting one. And now it's time for our final roll. Mama Mumbles has one last chance to impress or disappoint. What will it be? Did we give her enough love and affection today? Apparently not. We've got a Suppressor's minigun with limb damage and 90% reduced weight. You know what? I kind of take that back. If there is a weapon where the Suppressor's effect is useful, it's a minigun. Because the ammo is super cheap, you can find it everywhere, and it's super cheap to craft. So you can feed this thing really, really easily. Extra limb damage, I don't love that on most weapons, but this is a low damage per shot weapon. So if you're looking for some kind of crowd control weapon, say for daily ops, this is the kind of thing that maybe you can cripple some enemies, suppress their damage output, help your team. I'd again much rather see that in a real end game kind of piece of content where it would be more useful. But if you really want to play that support role and suppress enemy damage output, this would be the weapon to do it with. 90% reduced weight makes it a little easier to carry around. So, okay, maybe this one is not as horrible as I initially felt like it was. It's still not very good though. So, not in love with it. Mama Mumbles was not really good to us today. We got a couple of interesting things, but as is all too often the case with these Purveyor sales, we tend to end up with a whole lot more crap than good. And unfortunately, my stash is, pretty close to full on this character, so I'm going to have to get creative with how I dispose of this stuff. But with all that said, it was a trip to the Purveyor, and this is what happens at the Purveyor. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Either way, we get to talk about all kinds of different legendary effects and weapons, and what makes them good, bad, or somewhere in between. I do hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, follow me on Twitter. There's always more to come on the channel. We do live streams every week. We've got script videos all the time. We've got lore videos that are going to start coming out more often, so always plenty more to come, and I hope I see you all next time.